Shalom and welcome to the weekend edition of the Daily Dose of Hebrew. We're looking today at Jeremiah chapter 6, verse 3. In verse 1, the Lord had announced that he is bringing the Babylonian armies as his correcting rod against his people because of their unfaithfulness to him. In verse 2, he announced that he was going to destroy the beautiful and comely and delicate daughter of Zion. Their sentence of doom has been pronounced. And he's going to use some interesting language here in verse 3. It looks gentle, and we're going to find out that it really isn't at all. So let's go ahead and read this verse in Hebrew as we get started. Aleha yavo'u ro'im va'ezrehem takeu aleha ohelim saviv ra'u ish et yado. So we start with our preposition el, which takes this little yod when we attach a pronoun suffix, and we have what here, pronoun suffix. This is a third feminine singular suffix, toward her, or to her, and the her referring to the daughter of Zion, referring to the city of Jerusalem, which is referring to the people. So to her they will come. Well, who is the they? Well, we'll find that out in a second, but let's look at the verb here. We have a yod at the beginning, we have an u at the end. This is going to be an imperfect. It's going to be a third masculine plural, just a regular cow from our verb bo, meaning to come or to enter. So they will come to her. Who is going to come? Well, the roim. Roim, we have a holum right here. This is a participle, masculine plural participle with the im ending on it, and it's a cow, and it's from our good old verb ra'ah. A couple homonyms for this verb, but this one here means to pasture. So a roe is the typical word for a shepherd, used as a participle in the substantive form there. So roim would be shepherds. From that verb, to pasture, or to cause to pasture. So shepherds, and who else is coming with them? Edrehem. So we have this hem ending on it. This is a suffix. It's going to be a third masculine plural suffix. And eder, which is a noun which means flock. So we have the shepherds and their, with the suffix, their flocks. To them will come. Or to her will come, to Zion. Well, that sounds very pastoral until you realize that the shepherds is probably referring to the military leaders of the Babylonians, and their flocks would be obviously their soldiers or their battalions, whatever. So this is creating sort of an interesting military imagery here that's going to go on, and when flocks come in, they're going to tend to devour, and that's what we're going to see. But before we get that, we're going to see something else. Taku. Now, what do we have here? Well, this is a perfect, and this is going to be a third common plural from cow from the noun taka, which actually we saw this verb back in verse 1. And it actually sort of sounds very similar to the city of Tekoa, which we saw also in verse 1. But taka in verse 1 meant to sound or to blow the trumpet. It has this idea of some sort of a forceful linear movement, like when you blow a trumpet, you're blowing into it. But it also has this idea of a physical movement, of striking something down. Like this is the word that's used when Jael in Judges chapter 4, when she took the tent peg and the hammer and pounded the tent peg right through the Sisera's head, in that very gruesome scene back there. So it has this idea of driving something down. So what are they driving down? They will plant firmly against her. Again, this preposition al, similar to el in some ways, but more of an adversative sense. And again, the her is referring to Jerusalem. Tents. So you can see why you're using this word like planting a tent peg, this time on the ground, but it's planting their tents, planting tents all around. Sabib is a word that just has this idea of around, often used as an adverb meaning all around. So they're coming against her with their flocks, and they're planting their tents all around. Now you notice the perfect here has more reference to the past, but they have planted, but here they're going to come. both of these are sort of tying into this prophetic vision of what the Lord is going to do. He's going to bring them in the future, but it's a determined future, and they have planted with a future nuance. They are certainly going to do this. This is what we might almost call a prophetic perfect here. They're going to plant their tents all around. Ra'u, once again, we have our verb ra'a, meaning to pasture. But here it's going to be a perfect third common plural cow, just like over here. They cause to pasture, or they pasture each one. Now this is just the word for man, but when you see this more of a distributive way, it has the sense of everyone or each one or every man. A man, literally, a man is going to pasture his hand. Well, that's kind of a weird statement. This is a direct object marker with yad, hand, plus the suffix, third masculine singular suffix. Each man his hand. Well, hand probably has more general sense of side or place or that which is around next to him. Not literally his hand, but that which is his part, so to speak. So each one is going to take care of his own lot, which has been assigned to him to take care of in this upcoming siege. So you see, this is very pastoral imagery, but it's a pastoral imagery which gets rather gruesome in some ways, because it really implies that the city is going to be devoured, just like a large flock or flocks would devour the pasture lands. So let's go ahead and hide our work here and look at a couple of translations. First of all, the Jewish Publication Society, 1917, their older edition. Shepherds with their flocks, so pretty literal right there, come unto her. They pitch their tents. They strike their tent, but pitch is a good word for putting the stakes in. They pitch their tents against her round about. Very literal translation here. They feed, they pasture, they feed bare. Says it's that nuance that you're starting to get there. This is what's going to happen. Everyone, for man here, everyone, what is nigh at hand. So nigh at his hands. They've kept this sort of hand idea, but meaning that which is near this individual. You're not going to see a lot of variation in the translations. They all have very much the same idea, just in slightly different language. For instance, look at the NIV. Shepherds with their flocks will come against her. Here we have a present, here we have a future, but it's this coming destruction. They will pitch, just like they pitched this. They kept this as a present, but they bring this one all the way over into a future, even though it's a perfect here, because it's describing what's going to happen. They will pitch their tents around her. So pretty much almost the same as the Jewish Publication Society. Each tending his own portion. A man pasturing his hand. Each tending his own portion. So you get the feel for what's happening there. And then just a little bit more of a paraphrase with the Net Bible that we find, where they actually are explaining the imagery instead of shepherds, which is literally what we have here. They say this is what's going on here. It's kings, although kings may be a little more if it's actually the Babylonian king, unless he has other kings, which did happen. There may have been other alliances that were coming when they came against Jerusalem, but they're giving a little more interpretation. Kings or military leaders will come against her, with their armies. So instead of flocks, they're just straight out translating it armies. It is the word flock, but they're giving the sense of what they mean by there. They will encamp in siege. So they will pitch or plant their tents, encamp in siege all around it. So again, once again, they've explained that to us. Each of them will devastate the portion assigned to him. So pasturing each man on his hand. Well, this is what we're really saying here. So each will devastate the portion assigned to him. So the Net Bible is really giving us an explanation of what this imagery means, which is helpful to know, even though the language here is couched in this very sensitive imagery, which would make a big impact, obviously, on the people of Jerusalem. The judgment is coming, and it's not going to be a pleasant thing. When God's people turn away from him in disobedience, he brings his chastening hand. He does it for a good reason, but it's hard and quite severe when it comes. Well, more to say as we continue working through Jeremiah chapter 6, so check back with us soon on our weekend edition of the Daily Dose of Hebrew. Shalom.